Alright, so we're here at the theater to see the Spider-Man No Way Home More Fun Stuff version. I got my popcorn, we got our drink. We're going to let you know what we think as soon as we get out, what was added, what's different, what's new, and so here we go. Hey everybody, Cam with The Real World here, joined by my brother Carson.
Hey.
We just got out of Spider-Man No Way Home.
Spider-Man No Way Home,
The More Fun Stuff
edition.
Yes.
Yes.
So this was, released by Marvel Studios, re-released. They released this movie last year. Was a huge hit.
Studios keep doing this. They keep re-releasing their movies to make more money.
I know.
I have mixed feelings about this.
Yeah, I do too. And I think it's interesting though because, this was a huge hit when it was released last year, and it was one of the first kind of big movies back from the pandemic.
Right.
And so people were clamoring to go back to the theaters. They rushed out to see this. This summer has been, seen a resurgence in theater going.
Yeah.
In general, but to close out the summer, kind of a slow Labor Day weekend, not a
Right.
lot of new stuff coming out. Marvel decides to release this extended version, basically, of the recent Spider-Man movie No Way Home, which I have on 4K. I really enjoy this movie a lot. I think it's one of the best Spider-Man movies.
That's high praise.
Yeah,
That's high praise.
It's not my favorite, but it's one of the better ones, I would say.
I agree for the most part.
You have more problems with it.
Right. My feelings toward this movie are, I really, really enjoy half of it. That's the latter half of the movie. I think is really great. Mm-hmm. There's just terrific Spider-Man isms and lessons that he learns that are very typical of the character that I think are really, really well done in the later half. Yeah. In the opening half, it's a lot of the problems I have with an MCU Spider-Man, where he's like, he's having to deal with the greater consequences of the universe and not necessarily his neighborhood or his city.
Sure.
Right. So,
but I think what this movie does well is it concentrates on Peter Parker.
Sure.
It's not so much about that stuff.
Right.
To me, it focuses a little bit more on him.
Definitely.
Which is good. And his personal relationships with MJ and Ned and Aunt May.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they do a good job there. We are going to get into spoilers, but not yet. We're just going to give our spoiler-free reaction first. So coming out of the theater, what were your initial thoughts?
Initially, I thought it was amusing.
Yeah.
I thought it was amusing.
The more amusing edition. It should have been the title. There's a lot more jokes, Really what they add isn't a lot for the story or the characters.
Right. That was my biggest problem, that I felt that a lot of it was just kind of wasted time. But I also found, while I was watching it, I was fully aware that this was an added scene.
Right.
So I was kind of just comfortable just watching it almost in isolation.
Sure.
So that whenever it cut back to the movie, it was kind of jarring. Because we would go from a scene where it's just like an extended conversation.
Or they throw in a random moment.
And then we would cut right back into the pacing of the movie.
Yeah.
And it would feel very jarring, and it would kind of break apart some scenes that were...
Yeah, the scenes that were added, I'm glad they deleted them from the theatrical version. Because they do hurt the pacing of the film. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it is mostly just kind of some humorous moments, some jokes thrown in.
Yeah.
There's a couple of character things that they throw in that we'll get into more details on the spoiler version.
Yeah.
But all in all, I did have more fun with it, I think, overall. I don't know if it's more... I don't know if I would say it's better than the theatrical version.
It's definitely not better than the theatrical version, but as someone who likes to watch a bunch of deleted scenes and bloopers, and we just like to see extra stuff, a little more extra interactions between Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield stuff, all that little stuff that kind of behind-the-scenes fans enjoy. You get a lot out of from this.
Definitely. Overall, what they're adding here is about 11 minutes of extra footage. So the original runtime was 2 hours, 28 minutes. This one is 2 hours, 37 minutes. So it isn't a ton that they're adding, but you could definitely tell. I mean, we've seen the movie a number of times, the original version.
Sure.
So we could tell exactly what they added. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so overall, there are some cool moments here. If you're a fan of this movie, you're going to want to check it out. I think you will actually have a lot more fun with it. Again, I don't think it's better than the original cut, but I think it is worth watching, especially for Spider-Man fans, for MCU fans. I think there's a couple, especially the post-credit scene, I think is something that you'll get a lot out of.
Interesting thing about the post-credit scene actually is, I think it answers a lot of questions that I think people have had after this movie.
It's true. Let's get into spoilers. We'll talk more in detail about it.
Yeah.
Opening up the movie, before the movie even begins, we get an introduction by Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield. They look like they're on some kind of Zoom call.
Yeah, it's definitely like a scripted Zoom call where they're on there and they're just saying like, hey, thanks for supporting the movie and going to watch it again.
Yeah.
And they did this little fun bit afterwards where they all said, I love you to Andrew Garfield.
Right.
Just kind of a reference
because
to...
he says it in the movie.
Right, yeah. So it was fun, but ultimately kind of just...
Yeah, just getting you ready for the movie, getting you into it. Just a moment for fans, that kind of things. So after we jump into the movie, we then get a little bit of extra in the interrogation scene. So after Peter Parker is exposed, the damage control gets him, Aunt May, they get MJ, they get Ned. They take him to this interrogation room.
Right.
And it's kind of a montage of all of them being interrogated by this guy.
Right, yeah.
And you just get a couple of quick moments. I remember a moment with Peter where he's basically explaining to him how he's fighting all these bad guys on these important landmarks.
Right.
And monuments and stuff.
That's a running joke that was a little bit present in the original cut, but now has just been like, it's constantly referred to.
It is.
Of the Spider-Man versus National Monuments.
Right.
Where it's like... It opens with the scene. There's like a whiteboard behind him, and he's like explaining the Washington Monument,
right,
and like where he was.
Yeah, during Homecoming.
Yeah,
how he was fighting that whole vulture sequence.
Right.
So there's that. There's a moment with Aunt May where she says she used to protest when she was younger.
Right. I think this is an addition that I actually really enjoy.
Yeah, me too.
It's a little bit of like just a tidbit of information about her character that kind of make you understand her motivations and kind of why she's doing what she's doing with feasts and all that kind of stuff.
It tells you a little bit more about her kind of activism, that she's kind of been that way her whole life. So that is one of those like character moments that we get in this extended cut that is really interesting, that there weren't a ton of, but that was one of the best ones.
Right.
Then the next scene that we get that is a new addition is this scene where Spider-Man is stopping a criminal.
Right.
And he's chasing him down the street. It reminded me a lot of Homecoming when he's kind of stopping these petty crooks and he's just in the neighborhood and there's all these, just civilians walking by commenting on who he is and what he's doing. Yeah. And the criminal in question here that Spider-Man is taking down is actually Tom Holland's brother.
Oh, really?
Harry Holland.
Interesting.
Yes, it was a scene that was cut out of the movie. I remember him talking about that on his social media. My brother's going to be in the movie, and then you watch the movie and he's not in it. And so they put that scene back in here, which is fun. Okay. And it connects with the moment when Spider-Man gets paint thrown on his suit.
Right.
Which is kind of a running gag throughout the movie as well.
Sure,
Aunt May has to clean his suit, and he turns it inside out, so it looks different.
There are more spider suits in this movie than I think any other Spider-Man movie.
I think you're right.
If you count the regular suit he's wearing at the beginning.
The inside out.
He puts it inside out. I guess that counts as another suit.
The Iron Spider.
Iron Spider suit.
Then the Gold
Spider. Then...
Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, if you want to count those.
Okay, yeah. Those are two other suits.
Right.
And then his final swing suit.
Yes, exactly. So, that was another added moment. That was, just another kind of fun moment that didn't really add much to the story, but it was just kind of an extended scene. Next up, after Peter goes back to high school for his last year of high school, there is a gym scene. So he's in there with his gym coach who doesn't like him at all.
Sure.
He's this conspiracy theorist. He thinks he killed Mysterio and all this stuff. That's kind of a running gag.
So him and all of his classmates are kind of goading him into using his spider powers in gym class. They all want him to climb the wall.
Right.
So he's just like getting up there and
he climbs the wall with his spider powers.
There's a little bit of like kind of melodramatic, like a serious moment there for a moment.
Yeah, you close in on Peter Parker, and he's kind of like, man, this is what my life is
because
now.
the whole crowd is like has been cheering and excited for him to do this, and as soon as he starts climbing, everyone's quiet.
Right.
And they just watch him, and he's just climbing. And he's just like, what am I doing? And then
there's a little bit of
sadness. There's someone just off screen that says, "You're a freak."
Yeah.
And then the bell rings, and they all go, and it's like it's kind of like. It's a little bit of a kind of Peter Parker Spider-Man moment where he's like, this is my responsibility and I'm using it now in a way that's just nothing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was a pretty good moment. Again, not a necessary moment that adds a ton to the movie, but an interesting scene.
Yeah.
And then after this gym class scene, we move into a interview between Betty Brant, who's the school kind of reporter, and all these different characters. Flash Thompson, Ned Leeds, Peter Parker himself is interviewed. His teachers are all interviewed as well.
Right.
So this is another moment that's probably one of the longest sequences.
This felt like it went on for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Of just character after character saying a joke, coming in,
joking about Peter Parker, joking about Spider-Man.
This was my biggest worry, is that we would get nothing but scenes like this.
Exactly, right.
And I was surprised with the few good stuff that we did get, but a lot of it was just kind of like, there's another one where it's Peter walks by after gym class and Flash Thompson is signing his book.
Right.
And it's all these, all these girls are fawning over Peter, and it's all these people, and it's just kind of, it doesn't really mean anything. Right. It's just kind of there.
Yeah, it's just kind of giving us a little bit more of what he's going through at school.
Right. High school definitely feels a lot more hectic.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that was a long interview, series of interviews that we get with them, which ties in with the post-credit scene, which we'll get to in a moment.
Right.
Then we go into the Sanctum Sanctorum, where Doctor Strange lives, and Peter brings in Ned and MJ to help him track down all these villains who have escaped the multiverse. And we get this very brief little montage of Ned and MJ kind of bumbling around Doctor Strange's basement, the Undercroft, as it's called.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of silly. It doesn't add anything. It's just kind of Ned knocking over some stuff and being clumsy.
It happens like 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
Ned will like pick up a chair and then stuff will fall over and he'll go,
oops. Yeah.
And then he'll go and move a table and stuff will fall off the table and he'll go.
Right.
And then
it just happens like 3 or 4 times.
And it was so bizarre to see.
Yeah, it was an odd choice. Again, a very meaningless kind of attempt at humor that they were trying to just throw in there to kind of make this whole thing, they couldn't say we added 5 minutes of footage. It has to be at least 10 minutes. So it ends up being 11 minutes because they throw in little things like that. So that was another kind of just throwaway moment. After the sequence where Spider-Man fights Electro in the woods, we then get a sequence where J. Jonah Jameson with the DailyBugle.net is interviewing an electrician who happened to be at the site where this whole battle just took place.
Right.
And it's another kind of just funny moment that they threw in there. Doesn't really add much to the story or the characters. It's just kind of another moment with JJ, which, J.K. Simmons as this character is so great.
Yeah.
I can't disparage another moment with him. So, again, just kind of another meaningless sequence, very brief moment.
That led right into the condo scene.
Exactly, and that leads into the condo.
Right, yeah. And the scene we got just before the condo scene was one that I was very surprised to see. It's a little bit more of Charlie Cox Daredevil, Matt Murdock, a scene with him and Happy Hogan.
That's right.
They were there just kind of talking about Happy Hogan's legal troubles with the DOD and stuff like that. He only said like 3 words, but it was just cool to see him again, that there was footage we hadn't seen of him being a lawyer in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. More of Matt Murdock is always cool. Charlie Cox is great in that role. We know we're getting a series with him coming up on Disney+, so very excited to see more of him. But yeah, seeing more of him just here in his kind of civilian attire and his alter ego, Matt Murdock, was really cool.
Right.
So after that sequence, the whole condo sequence happens, the death of Aunt May, we get the other 2 Spider-Men appearing in the universe, and then when they finally do get to the Statue of Liberty, we get a few more moments with just Spider-Man bantering. So it's, again, just kind of more humor, more time spent with these 3 actors that we've been dying to see together on screen.
Yeah.
And it is fun. I did have a lot of fun with those extra moments. They talk a little bit more about the spider webs and things like that. That I thought was fun. Again, not totally necessary, but if you're a Spider-Man fan, it is a lot of fun to see that.
Right, yeah.
So again, it's not a ton there. It's a couple lines of dialogue that's just kind of thrown out there. I can't remember exactly what was said, but again,
it's forgetful.
It's
forgettable.
That's
the biggest
stuff.
problem with it is that it's mostly like a scene goes on for a second longer than it usually
does. They add these little snippets in.
Right.
It's not like entire sequences, so it's kind of hard to remember exactly what it was. But again, if you're a Spidey fan, if you want more of these 3 actors just talking together on screen, you'll get a kick out of it for sure. And then finally, the last sequence that's added is a post-credit sequence. So we get that Venom sequence in the mid-credits, and then after all the credits have rolled, there's another sequence, another Betty Brant interview.
This is definitely my favorite addition to the movie.
Yeah, so Betty Brant does this news report basically on the school year and what they've been through. You know, they're graduating now, and it's kind of a montage of scenes from Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home.
Without Peter Parker.
Exactly. So now that everyone has forgotten who Peter Parker is,
right,
this is how they remember all these events taking place.
Exactly.
It's really interesting. Spider-Man still exists, but Peter Parker...
Right. They show photographs of Ned and MJ together, where typically you would see Peter there as well, but Peter's just completely missing from the picture.
Or in one picture, I noticed there was like a bird covering Peter's face.
Right.
You know,
Something like
stuff
that.
like that, where they just... There's no memory of him ever existing in this world. And so it kind of... you know, shows us how this affects these people's lives.
Right. It gives us a little bit of closure with weird magic stuff. It doesn't make any sense, but that, and then it also kind of bookends the movie in a sense, because I believe the movie should have opened with kind of a Betty Brant interview. Like, would have given a more grounded, real kind of perspective instead of the big skyscrapers and everything. But it closes with Betty Brant talking... in her interview. It's just super cool that way.
Yeah, if they had started with that other deleted sequence of Betty Brant interviewing all these people who know Peter, it would have made for a cool bookend.
Right.
So it gives that other sequence earlier that we hadn't seen before more significance, I think. So yeah, those were the most interesting scenes for us that were added in. All right, so those were our thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home, the more fun stuff version, in theaters right now. Today is National Cinema Day. We got $3 tickets, so we had to go see this. So this was a lot of fun, I guess. Sure. The more amusing version, in your opinion?
Mildly amusing.
Yeah. Okay. If you're a Spidey fan, though, if you're an MCU fan like we are, you got to check it out. Be sure to give us your review in the comments below if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, what do you want to see more of in the future with Spider-Man? We've got tons of ideas for Spider-Man 4 that we talked about in the car ride home. So be sure to leave us a comment below. Give us a like. Hit that like button below. That helps us a lot. And be sure to subscribe as well. We're over 100 subscribers now. We really thank you for the support. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.
Whatever.
What are you doing? Just let me do my
outro.
Sorry,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And be sure to come back next time right here at The Real World.
Oh, I thought you were going to say on The Real World. I was going to do it with you. Okay, good.
Works. Hit stop.